Good afternoon. My name is Bruce Knight, former chief of the Natural Resources Conservation Service, now a consultant working with the National Cotton Council, trying to help members of the Cotton Council make sense and get greater access to the conservation programs. And we're talking today about a rental program known as the Conservation Reserve Program. Conservation Reserve Program was born in the 1985 Farm Bill, primarily oriented at highly erodible land, as well as reducing what in the 1980s were surplus stocks of grains and cotton and every commodity. CRP has evolved a lot since then.
Congress, when they were wrestling with how to provide savings in the conservation portfolio, decided to make many of those changes in the Conservation Reserve Program, primarily because the marketplace was actually demanding some of those acres coming out. Also, some of those acres are really good quality farmland that's probably better off being in production. As a result, starting in last year in 2014, there is a 27 million acre cap on the CRP. It's operating below that cap today and will go down to about 24 million acres. That is an overall cap of continuous enrollments, filter strips, buffer strips, those things. A couple million acres that will be new of grassland enrollments that weren't an eligible criteria in the past, and then the traditional general enrollments. This means that CRP, general enrollments, will be smaller in the future. There wasn't one offered last year in 2014. We expect one every year from there on out because they need to rotate those acres, but also more continuous enrollments, more buffer strips, more filter strips, more wetlands enrolled in CRP. This also means a CRP program that's going to fit a little better with many working lands farm operations, where it fits in conjunction with working lands efforts.
But it's essential that we use those acres in our program and to try to justify every acre that we have. And so with this program, we could enroll it into it, put it back to the native state, and still draw some payment to help on taxes and as far as operating expenses.
We're seeing CRP used a little bit differently now as it's grown and evolved, but it's become a vibrant part of the conservation tool chest. There's still going to be general signups for the Conservation Reserve Program. That's going to be very key for people who have existing contracts, because remember, CRP is a rental payment of 10 to 15 years, an annual payment over a 10 to 15 year period, and people are always interested in renewing those contracts. No limitations on the number of acres that can go into CRP when it's used in the continuous signups. In the surgical use of it, there are quirky little rules as to which acres are in and which acres are not, and ones that an individual needs to work very closely with the Farm Service Agency office and the NRCS office in determining which acres on a farm operation will be eligible and what the size and type of those payments would be. The other interesting thing about CRP is it's evolved over the last 2 decades, is that many states now also offer enhancements on top of CRP for particular areas. And so you want to look to see if your state has what is known as a CREP, Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program. Parts of the South and Southeast have CREPs associated with buffers for bobwhite quail, and that may be a very viable opportunity for some folks in the Cotton Belt.
In the case of the Conservation Reserve Program, again, it comes back to pollinators, wildlife habitat, those things that may improve the ranking for the acceptance of a contract offering that may be out there. The great thing about it is that the average Farm Service Agency employee or NRCS Service Agency employee who's working with the cotton farmer, they want him to get enrolled in the programs as well. So they're willing to help. You just got to be able to ask the questions about how do I make my offering the best possible and improve my odds of being accepted.
I would say that they need to go and talk to the NRCS and see if they meet the requirements of it. And if they do, give it a lot of thought.
Biggest thing on enrollment of CRP is you have to own the land for at least 12 months prior to putting that into a contract. As a landlord, if that land has been rented to a tenant, the tenant is generally going to be required to share in that contract as well as you move forward. But the rules are fairly simple, and you can get more details from your USDA Service Center. CRP, through the incentives program, may pay for additional payments associated with, in the past, they've done bonuses for sign-ups at particular times of the year, or incentives for putting warm season grasses in versus cool season grasses.
So by the time that you get it done, well, you really haven't been out very much expense on establishing the grasses and getting it to the point where you can just leave it alone and just let nature take its course on it.
Those things vary a great deal from state to state, and that's the key thing here, is that all conservation is local. The decisions on conservation, on priorities, are correctly established more at the state level than at the national level, and so you really need to work with your district conservationist and your county FSA office on which aspects of CRP will work best on your farm operation.
It benefits the land, and that's what it's about, is trying to keep the land better than what we received it.
CRP, like all the conservation programs, you're bound to a contract to deliver a particular set of goods and services. In the case of CRP, it may be restoration of a wetland. At the very least, it is the establishment of a stand of grass. Sometimes it's the planting of trees. And they're going to come out and they're going to look to see, do you have the number of trees that are expected on that? Are the right kind of grasses established out there? Are noxious weeds controlled? Very important, both to USDA and to your neighbor. And so each of these are key components of delivery on that contract associated with the Conservation Reserve Program.